Qatar is burning. Netanyahu has once again attacked another country, claiming the goal was to kill Hamas. The outcome was the same as before. Civilians died, while Hamas's leaders survived the attack. The question is, what does this mean for the region? Israel has never launched a direct attack on Qatari soil before. Qatar is a close partner of the United States. In the end, it was hosting Hamas leadership to hammer out a ceasefire deal on USA's behest. By striking Doha, Israel has triggered an unprecedented escalation. And this is what Netanyahu had to say about it.
We also have a September 11th. We remember October 7th. On that day, Islamist terrorists committed the worst savagery against the Jewish people since the Holocaust. So we did exactly what America did when it went after the terrorists, the Al-Qaeda terrorists in Afghanistan, and after they went and killed Osama bin Laden in Pakistan.
But let's be clear, that address was disingenuous. Netanyahu wrapped Israel's strike in the language of 9/11, exploiting America's pain to justify his own actions. He compared Hamas in Doha to Al-Qaeda in Afghanistan. But that comparison collapses under scrutiny. Al-Qaeda was sheltered by the Taliban as a permanent safe haven. Hamas, on the other hand, was in Qatar under U.S. mediation, working on a ceasefire deal, and reports suggest they were close to achieving one. By striking Doha, Netanyahu didn't just target Hamas. He sabotaged a fragile peace effort. Netanyahu accused Qatar of harboring terrorism. This is how the Prime Minister of Qatar responded to these allegations.
Qatar, when Hamas office was established, was done with coordination, request by the Americans, by the Israelis. They've been using it as a communication channel for them, for Gaza, for all those years.
Which only proves the point. Netanyahu isn't after peace. He wants war. And this isn't new. In the 90s, he fought against the Oslo peace accords. In 2014, he helped sink US-backed talks. And time and again, whenever a ceasefire was close, he chose escalation instead. Doha is just the latest example of that same pattern. Here is what the Prime Minister of Qatar had to say about it. Netanyahu has once again embarrassed his allies with his recklessness. This time, it was the US that was shocked and humiliated the most. First, the attacks were executed without the US go-ahead. Second, the US, along with Egypt, Qatar, and other partners like Turkey, had been working hard to arrange a ceasefire agreement. An effort that Netanyahu derailed in a way that may now be impossible to bring back on track. Thirdly, the U.S. is a security guarantor to Qatar and other Gulf states. These governments believed they were safe from Israeli attacks in the region because of their common ally in Washington. But Netanyahu just shattered that assumption, making them question whether the U.S. is really a reliable protector, and showing that he can strike anyone, anywhere, on his own whims. The U.S. was caught so off guard that the State Department only alerted Qatar 10 minutes after the missiles had already struck. Well, Trump felt quite bad about it. This is what he had to say.
Well, I'm not thrilled. I'm not thrilled about it. I don't have to do that. I'm not thrilled about the whole situation. It's not a good situation. But I will say this, we want the hostages back, but we are not thrilled about the way that went down.
If even Trump was uneasy, it shows how reckless this strike was. Because at the heart of it, Netanyahu didn't just hit Hamas in Doha, he hit America's credibility. The alarm bell tolling here is that Netanyahu has said that he will attack Qatar and other countries again if they keep Hamas's official. And here's the bigger danger. Netanyahu isn't just threatening Qatar anymore. He openly warned that any country hosting Hamas officials could face the same fate.
And I say to Qatar and all nations who harbor terrorists, you either expel them or you bring them to justice. Because if you don't, we will.
That means nations like Turkey, a NATO member and close U.S. ally, are suddenly in the crosshairs. And it doesn't stop there. Qatar has deep ties with the UAE, Saudi Arabia, Pakistan, and much of the Muslim world. By expanding the battlefield in this way, Netanyahu is no longer just fighting Hamas. He's picking a fight with an entire region. And that makes this strike far more dangerous than a single attack in Doha. Because if Israel is willing to target allies of Washington, even NATO partners, the question isn't just what happens to Hamas anymore. The question is, how long before this war pulls the whole region, and even the West, into a confrontation it cannot control? Concerned by these developments and their belief in American security guarantees, the UAE expressed deep concern over the attack. President Sheikh Mohammed bin Zayed visited Doha to reinforce Gulf unity, while advisor Anwar Gargash stressed collective security. The UAE also condemned Netanyahu's threats, warning they endanger the entire Gulf. Saudi Arabia condemned the Israeli airstrike as a brutal aggression and violation of Qatar's sovereignty, warning of serious consequences and Israel's disregard for international law. Oman also denounced the attack as a violation of sovereignty, expressing solidarity with Qatar and emphasizing respect for national borders in the region. By far, the most fiery statement came from Turkey, and that's no surprise. Turkey is directly implicated because some Hamas leaders maintain a presence on Turkish soil, making Ankara part of the equation in Netanyahu's warnings. With Turkey hosting Palestinian and regional actors and being both a U.S. ally and a NATO member, the Doha strike suddenly expands the conflict into Turkish territory's sphere of concern. The Turkish government condemned the attack as a blatant violation of international law and Qatar's sovereignty. President Erdogan personally called the Emir of Qatar to express condolences and reaffirm support, while Turkish officials warned that such actions threaten regional stability and could trigger a wider escalation. Essentially, Turkey is signaling that Israel's message isn't just aimed at Hamas in Qatar. It risks targeting any country that hosts Hamas officials, including Turkey itself. With Ankara's strategic, economic, and political ties across the Middle East, the Turkish response highlights just how serious the regional implications of this strike could become. But the ones most affected by this entire episode are the people of Gaza and the families of the Israeli hostages. Even former President Trump, when asked about the escalation, hinted that the hostages' safe return is now at risk, suggesting that Netanyahu's strike may have set back the negotiations significantly. In fact, the Qatari Prime Minister revealed in an interview that he spoke with a hostage family just the day before, and they described these talks as their last hope.
I was meeting one of the hostages' family that morning, the morning of the attack, carrying a message that the families, they are counting on this mediation. They have no other hope for that. And I think that what Netanyahu has done yesterday, he just killed any hope for those hostages.
The strike in Doha, intended to target Hamas, now casts a long shadow over the very lives these delicate negotiations were meant to protect. For the Hamas officials, trust is gone. Their safe havens feel unsafe, and any deal now carries the risk of being sabotaged or used against them. They're under pressure, both from their people and their regional allies, to show strength, not compromise. Just when it seemed the region might inch closer to a fragile peace, there's another layer to this story, one that's happening back home in Israel. Netanyahu isn't just dealing with Hamas. He's also facing a slew of legal troubles and multiple indictments. Some analysts suggest that timing isn't coincidental. By escalating the war now, right as ceasefire talks were within reach, Netanyahu may be buying himself political cover, a way to shift attention outward, rally national support, and perhaps even influence public opinion amid mounting legal pressure. In other words, this strike wasn't just about Gaza or Qatar, it could also be about Netanyahu's own survival. So, where does Qatar go from here? One thing is clear: trust has been broken. Doha may now rethink how it handles Hamas officials on its soil and could push for stronger regional security guarantees. Diplomatic channels with Israel are likely frozen for the foreseeable future, and Qatar may lean even more heavily on its Gulf allies and international partners like Turkey to protect its sovereignty. Some legal experts even argue that Netanyahu's strike could be questioned at international courts, like the ICC, for violating Qatar's sovereignty. This reckless move doesn't just shift the calculus for one country, it risks triggering a broader security alliance among Muslim and Arab nations, who could coordinate more closely to directly pressure Israel. Ironically, by acting unilaterally, Netanyahu may have deteriorated Israel's own security, making the country more isolated and more vulnerable to regional backlash. For the people of Gaza, the hostages' families, and all the countries watching closely, the message is chilling. The rules have changed. The road to peace just got a lot more complicated, and the consequences for Israel itself may only be beginning.